Hi, everyone. Okay, I think we're going to get started here. I wanted to welcome you all to our webinar today. So we're going to talk all about how to hire the best movers and drivers. We know that it is a tight labor market out there. And we brought on an expert here who is looking at this every day with his company. And so we're going to talk to him in a bit. Before we introduce him, I'll just do a quick intro about myself and the company that I represent. So my name is Matt Clooney. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at OnQ. We are a software and booking service specifically for the moving industry. And we work with moving companies of all sizes to help them streamline operations and get more sales. Because at the end of the day, sales is the lifeblood of any moving company. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hunter to introduce himself and the company that he's with.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Hunter Munroe with Move Up Consulting. We specialize in recruiting in the moving industry. We only work with moving companies, and whether it's your movers and drivers side of things, we can take a look at operations side as well. But really, movers and drivers recruiting is our bread and butter. Happy to be here. Thanks for hosting me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's get right into it. So, before we get into these challenges that I think you're going to kind of go through one by one, as I mentioned earlier, it's definitely a tight labor market that we're seeing out there. It's hard to recruit, for lots of different types of roles here. But I'd love to hear a little bit of what you see from your vantage point with the moving industry, and maybe we can highlight some of these and then maybe do a deep dive in each one if that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is definitely not a complete list that I'll go through today. There's so many aspects when it comes to recruiting, but I think this kind of encapsulates, at least in my experience, from being in the moving industry and working with companies today, what I found to be true. So, that first one, we don't have a specific avatar of who we're looking for. Just casting too wide of a net. We need to be a bit more specific and targeted with our search. Only hiring when we need to. I put it in quotations. Maybe we're only thinking about who we need this month, maybe next month. So maybe widening those parameters there. And then just not budgeting enough time and resources. I'm a big advocate for budgeting time out on a weekly basis, monthly basis. So, making this a part of the routine process of running the company, I think is essential. So yeah, that's what I say are going to be the big three. And I'll dive into them more in depth here in a minute.
Yeah, cool. All right. So maybe, so talk about this one. Don't have a specific avatar of who we're looking for, maybe casting too wide a net. Maybe talk a little bit about what does that typically look like for companies that you work with?
Sure. I think we need to recognize a few things that are true in this time when it comes to recruiting, specific to moving, but also just in heavy labor type industries as well. My generation and younger, younger millennials, Gen Z, whether it's true or not, we believe 10% in our brain that we can make millions starting a YouTube channel, a podcast, playing video games. Like, that's in our brain because we see it all the time. And so the reality is, when it comes to some of the, people in their early 20s, late teens, when they think about a heavy labor job like moving, the question they're asking is, well, why would I go move furniture when I can go make $20 an hour at a Starbucks, or I can just stream online for $20 an hour, plus make tips? And so I think that's a harsh reality that we have to accept, is that it's just so much more competitive of a market for younger generations. And so when I talk about finding a specific, figuring out a specific avatar of who we're looking for, I think that's a part of the conversation, is just knowing who is the type of individual that's going to enjoy manual labor, who's the type of individual that's going to enjoy going into someone's home, introducing themselves, providing a quality service, and that who can manage crews if they're a supervisor, or drive a truck if they're a supervisor as well. I think that's who we need to be thinking about, and just recognizing that's different than what it was 10 years ago. Your typical college student, they may not be just a hand and glove fit when it comes to this type of role. And so I think, knowing your specific avatar of who it is for your business, it's just crucial, because if you know exactly who you're looking for, it's way easier to start looking for them. The question, and so, who's going to enjoy this type of work is a question that I ask a lot. What characteristics do they possess? With moving, detail oriented is huge. So then start thinking about, okay, what are some jobs in today's market that are very detail oriented and also physical? And, that you could look at other labor industries, whether that's junk removal, roofing, landscaping. Those are big, heavy labor jobs as well, require a lot of attention to detail. You could recruit in those spaces. And then how do we hunt rather than just wait? And so posting an ad is awesome. I think it's definitely a strategy we use at MoveUp, but it can't just be that. We have to go to the talent. We just can't expect the talent to come to us in today's recruiting world. So, one thing that I did when I was general manager of a moving company is I sometimes would just go sit at gas stations in the mornings that were kind of in industrial spaces. Every morning, day in and day out, other big trucks are going to pull up there, whether it's moving related or not. And I would just strike conversations. That was a way that I would go to the talent, not let the talent just come to me. From a recruiting standpoint, online, there's different resources that you can use. ZipRecruiter is a great resource that we use in-house to actually go find the talent. We can look at resume databases and actually gain access to the resume through that channel. You can do the same thing with Indeed, using their resume database as well, actually going to the talent, clicking on that resume, starting a conversation, rather than just waiting for them to come to you. So I think you have to hunt. You just can't cast a net and fingers crossed. You really have to be meticulous on hunting. And so I think, when talking about creating a specific avatar, if you know exactly who you're looking for, it's going to be way easier to spot them. In the sea of all the talent that can get overwhelming, you'll have a much better chance finding your one or two people that will stick to your calendar. So that's what I mean by that.
That's great. So I guess maybe just going back a bit on the characteristics front. So you said it's a little bit of a mix of aptitude for the type of work involved, but also kind of that softer side of just kind of customer service orientation, working well with people, being outgoing. Anything else on out of those two that you would add to the mix, whether it's kind of more the hard skills or kind of the softer ones as we're talking to moving company owners, things that they should look for, or maybe candidates that you or your company have met for, like, yep, that's going to be a great match?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, ride sharing's huge today. A lot of people have ride sharing experience, and I think that can be very parallel as well when it comes to the moving industry. You're with multiple different people at any given day. You know how to build quick rapport in a small time frame when they're in the vehicle with you. So I think people who are doing ride sharing is great, and also they already know the city, so they've been driving around the city. They know different neighborhoods, they know different spots, they know how to navigate, get around traffic, and I think in moving, that's important. And obviously, I personally, of course, people looking for physical fitness is definitely a benefit. It's great to have someone that can lift a 300-pound armoire. But I have found it to be true, people that are much more patient and know how to slow down when things get stressful is equally as important. I remember we had a guy who was a Division I offensive lineman, very, very muscular, knew how to move furniture, but he rushed. And so that caused damages, and that caused, sometimes frustration. And then we had a guy on the other end who was just kind of your average looking guy, but he was very patient. He took his time with the furniture, wrapping it, protecting it, and he rarely ever had damages. So I think just knowing, what's their aptitude of when things get stressful, how calm can they be in those moments? That would be another thing that I would look for in a candidate when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, and I guess I'll make an obvious point, which is like you have to meet the person, right, in real life, and get to know them, and you kind of tease some of this stuff out and see if they would be a fit for the type of service that your company is built its reputation around, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, branding's everything. It's that first impression when you walk through the door, when you walk in the door, introduce a customer, or introduce yourself to a customer, that sets the tone. for
Yeah.
the entire day. So they have to know how to make that work well.
Right. Okay. We can go on to the next one. You talked a little bit about just kind of like the ins and outs of hiring. And so one of the things you said is a big challenge, only hiring when you need to. Maybe talk a little bit about that. So yeah, what does that typically look like?
Yeah, and traditionally things are going to pick up in the summer, maybe early spring, depending on your market. And within a 2-week time frame, that's when moving companies typically start thinking about, okay, I need to start getting some more guys, maybe hit up the college guys that worked for you last year. You start, those recruiting efforts. And for me, I look at recruiting through a sales lens.
Mm-hmm.
So that if talent is ready to work, I want to be the first people to have that conversation with the talent. And, I want to start that conversation, that rapport building, that recruitment process as early as possible, so I can get in their brain earlier in the process. And so, starting recruiting maybe in June or May or April, I think that's too late.
Yeah.
If you're doing it at that point, there are already other great moving companies in your market that have months ahead of where you're at in the recruitment process. And so there's phenomenal talent ready to work in December and January for moving companies. And that's been true with clients I've worked with, because a lot of our clients are recruiting year round that we work with. And so they're really pedal to the metal with the recruiting process in November, December, January. And that's when typically a lot of moving companies are struggling with allocation of hours, making sure their guys are well fed. And that's when movers and drivers start feeling a little shaky about their current position. It's like, dang, I only got 20 hours this week. I only got 25 hours this week. Who else is out there that maybe they have more hours for me? And so they just go online, they go on Indeed, Facebook, moving companies near me that are hiring. And because our clients are aggressively recruiting in those months, they're at the top of all those lists. And so I think that's a great platform to start those conversations in December and January. You're way ahead of the game when everyone else starts hitting up these guys April and May. That top talent's not going to be available because they're already going to be elsewhere working. So you're really looking at recruiting through a year-round lens, not just looking at it as a band-aid in the moment of just, let me just get this driver position filled so I can get this truck out. But how do you build a great team and roster? Looking at it through an annual lens, I think is vital for recruiting.
And I guess, and so why do you think it takes so? Is it just because it's a more of a competitive market now out there with all different types of opportunities, or do the vetting process takes longer, or is it a combination of those, or something else? Or
I think it's both. Moving, with COVID in 2020, I think moving changed drastically. Moving became so much more of a vulnerable experience because home was a safe place for people. And so to invite people into that space, at times it wasn't safe to do that, or it was hard to do that. Rent was still due and leases were still being renewed. So it was such a hard time to figure out, how do we navigate the moving world when it comes to 2020. And because of that, I just think the standard of your typical mover in terms of qualities has increased tenfold. Mm-hmm. It's no longer okay just to have a guy that can move something from A to B. You need well-rounded individual who can articulate themselves very well, can speak to the customer, look them in the eye, and have a good conversation with them while they're moving their furniture. And so I think because of that, it's just so much more competitive. And the time frame to recruit a well-rounded individual, it takes longer than a week. It takes longer than 2 weeks. There's a getting to know process, and there's follow-up that has to happen. So I think the earlier you can start that process, the better that you'll be in terms of quantity, actually like filling your roster, and then quality, like in terms of the type of individuals that you have on your roster.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, busy season is coming up sooner than we think. And so,
yes.
I mean, I guess what would you say, just before we move off this top, okay, great. It's great that, planning ahead. So I'll think about that next year. But like right now, I'm coming up with something. Is there anything, there probably isn't an easy solve or shortcut, but what would you tell, a moving company owner that is like, okay, I got it, but like I'm still a bit in a crunch right now. Anything that they could do or tricks you've seen where time is a little bit more, under pressure?
Yeah, like if they needed someone yesterday,
Yeah.
like I really need someone yesterday, really quick action steps that I would give is look at your referral incentives. So if
Mhm.
you're not currently giving employees referral incentives, if they refer a great person that ends up staying with you for 2 months, give them a couple $100 as a thank you for sending them that person. It's a
Interesting.
long way, and it's so much easier to incorporate that referral into your company because there's already built rapport there. They know someone already, and that's going to save a lot of time and keep things flowing in terms of building your roster. And then also, I would just ask anyone around you, anyone that's already in your referral network, whether it's your previous customers that you've had a great experience with you, send out an email blast. Hey, we really want to grow this year and we're hungry to add great quality talent. Do you know anyone? You could give them
Yeah.
a voucher as well for sending you someone. Happy customers are always going to give you, great referrals, whether it's on the job side of things or whether it's on the recruitment side of things. That's a great place to look for as well. So those would be the two things that you could do today. Send out an email blast, send out a text message to your current team if you really needed someone in a pinch to recruit short term. That's what I would do.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, referral for programs can work well because they obviously
Absolutely.
incent the right behavior. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, maybe we can just go to this third challenge, not budgeting enough time and resources. So obviously moving companies don't have limitless time and resources and always are thinking about, what to spend and what's the right amount. Maybe you could tell a little bit about what you see from your end, what's the best practice.
To be transparent, this was the hardest thing for me. In my role with the moving company that I was with for 3.5 years, I was a general manager, but I wore 7 different hats. I had my hand in sales, operations, damage claims, payroll, and recruiting. And so I was, a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and that always fluctuated week to week. And it was really hard for me to have concrete blocks of time devoted to specific tasks. And so, when I talk about budgeting enough time, the reality is it takes more time than you think. Roughly the numbers that I've seen on average is for every 100 applicants that you generate for the mover or driver positions, you're going to find 1 or 2 quality people that will stick to your calendar long term. And so the time it takes to work through those 100 applicants, just scroll through them, call them, have those conversations, ask them those questions. You invite them to the interviews. Some don't show up, some do. It's time consuming. And so being able to devote, a specific amount of time that's oriented around your goals is really important when it comes to recruiting. And so when a moving company says to me, hey, I need 4 movers or drivers, in the next couple of months, the way that I look at that is, okay, well, then more than likely, we need about 400 applicants is what we need to search through and work through to find those 4 quality people that will stick to your calendar. And then you start seeing, oh, wow, how do I allocate the time to work through 400 applicants? And then when it comes to resources and, budgeting, what's the cost to generate 400 applicants? And the rough number that I've seen is, 1.5% of your annual revenue is good to invest towards recruiting. And I intentionally use the word investment. I think cost isn't the best word. The cost, for me, it's an investment in my people. It's an investment in my team, and where I'm investing time and resources, I'm going to get a return on that. And so if we're investing, 1.5% of our annual budget, about, give or take. Also, we're investing enough time in the week, whether that's 5 hours, 10 hours of time, 15 hours if you're really aggressive. That's when I'll start seeing some good results with recruiting. So that's what I mean by not budgeting enough time and resources.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess maybe go back to the example you gave in terms of you're looking for a couple candidates, but you have to interview, you have to get 100 your pipeline. When you tell the companies you work with, what's typically the reaction? Like 100? Well, how am I going to do that, or how are we going to do that?
Yeah, and a lot of them get it. They're like, yeah, I understand it. Because of those 100, you might invite only 30 of them to interview with you.
Yeah.
Of those 30, if it's a great week, 12 will show up to that interview. And you'll hire 6 of those guys after you interview them, and then 1 or 2 will stick after 3+ months.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just being disciplined with your time, and whether it's budgeting an hour a day to calling all those applicants, having that 10 to 15 minute conversation with them over the phone. And in those initial phone calls, I like to be technical heavy. Are you willing to undergo a background check, motor vehicle report? Do you have reliable transportation? Let's get some of those more technical things out of the way. And then if they come to the interview, that's when I like to get to know character, like who they are as actual person. That's when I dive into those things. And yeah, I just really, it's just choosing to budget time every day and not wavering from that, not letting the damage claim that just popped up in my email distract me, not letting payroll that's due in a couple hours distract me. I have to commit to this recruiting every day for a couple of hours if I really want to get the results that I want in terms of recruiting. And if you can't do that, either A, you need to help find others in the office that will help you, or B, offload some of your current tasks. That would be my recommendation, is what I would do.
Yeah, so offloading current tasks, and I would guess, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, how do you keep track of all of those candidates if you're really following up? Then I guess, automation or things that you can set up to make it easier would probably help. I mean, on OnCue, that's essentially what we're all about in our software. It helps automate some of the tasks that help our customers follow up with potential leads and customers throughout the life cycle of their move. But maybe could you talk a little bit about that? How can automation or just processes help, moving company owners keep track of like their whole pipeline as it relates to candidates?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's, we take a sales approach to recruiting. We see it one and the same. So, we have a customized CRM that we would use. It allows us to have those email automations, text message automations as soon as someone submits an application. And then with us, if I call an applicant and they don't pick up the phone, I'm going to leave a voicemail, and I'm calling later that day as well, or first thing next morning. I recommend at least 3 to 5 times you're calling each applicant. On that 4th call, you might get a hold of them. They're a phenomenal person that's just been busy, which, I have busy weeks as well. Sometimes I'm hard to get hold of. I like to think I'm still a good worker because of that. That's just, I put my phone on silent. So, not giving up on someone just because they've been hard to get a hold of, I think is really important. I was so guilty of that when I was general manager. I would call an applicant once. If it goes to voicemail, we'll never contact them again. I have other things I need to work on. Don't want to take that approach to recruiting. You're really missing out on quality candidates that are 3 phone calls away, 4 phone calls away. And so having a CRM can really help you leverage that. I know it's on the sales side of things, it's the exact same way. You're able to see all of your interactions and engagement with one person on one screen. It's the same thing with recruiting. You're able to see all the different connection points and reach outs that you've done in the week span. So I think having a CRM that's unique to recruiting, or your own internal system, is going to keep you well organized with the recruiting.
And do you find, like obviously calling is important, email, text, social media, like are there other ways that you found that your clients have been able to kind of connect with candidates outside of just picking up the phone?
Yeah, I mean, that phone conversation is crucial
Sure.
for us. That's definitely what we want to gear towards. We use Facebook. Facebook's a great tool as well to connect with people. And also on Facebook, you can, depending on their visibility of their profile, you can kind of get a gauge on who they are even before you call them over that phone. For a higher level position, LinkedIn is a great resource too that we have found beneficial. And I just think it's really just putting the numbers in your favor with the connection points. So the more I'm connecting, engaging, whether it's email one day, text message the next day, phone call the other day, as long as I'm getting those 4 or 5 outbound, I guess, points of contact in that week span, it's really going to increase the chance that I'll have a productive conversation with an applicant.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think what we can do, since we're getting close to time, we can do kind of the key takeaways. But for those who are on the phone, if you want to ask any questions, just hit the Q&A button in the Zoom control, and we'll take as many as we can. So while folks are doing that, maybe Hunter, we can just pivot a bit to maybe some of the challenge and maybe just some of the outcomes, I guess, or just ways that, moving company owners can get around some of the challenges we talked about.
Yeah, big thing on the first one is be specific with the type of individual that you're recruiting for. Write out a detailed profile. It's common just to say, well, I want someone who's experienced. Well, what does experienced mean? How many years of experience do they have? What type of vehicles have they driven? What type of businesses have they worked with? When it comes to characteristics, are they well-spoken? Do they have college experience? Do they not have some college experience? What does that look like? What type of other jobs have they done? Do they have a lot of face-to-face interaction with customers? Do they not have that? And then just in their general life, are they a athletic person? Do they enjoy the fitness part of it? Is that not important to them? Really just write down all those different things, because if I know all those characteristics, then I can start searching areas where I know those people can be, whether it's places of business, places on social media. It's just so much easier to find my ideal avatar when I have that fully built out profile and I'm looking at it every day. So that's what I mean by that, being specific. And then hire year round for the best return on your investment. It's, for me, I look at it as building out a pipeline. And so if I'm continually building that pipeline, adding to that pipeline, there's someone I might add in that first month that will then finally start engaging with me in the 6th month. And then that's just going to start building up as time goes on. And if you're continually looking in that pipeline, calling people, having those conversations, qualifying, disqualifying, slowly over time, you're going to see your quantity of staff increase. And if you're always looking for talent, you're always going to start finding quality talent that way too. I can understand the argument if your staff's full, you might say, I don't know if I need to recruit right now. I am always interested in well-rounded individuals and adding them to my team. Whether I have 20 drivers for my 10 trucks or not, I'll take on a phenomenal extra driver if he's exactly what I'm looking for. And then third, having weekly recruiting goals that are focused on process, not results. It can be hard to set a goal around the idea of, let's just find 4 great people. Well, how do I do that? And so really, for me, my goal is, my goals tend to be, let's try to generate 100 leads this week. Let's try to call 100 leads this week. Let's try to find, of those 100 leads, let's try to invite 30 to an in-person interview this week. That's where my goals are, because I can actually do that. I can actually go out and call 100 people. I can't get 4 quality people just to walk in the door today, because it requires them to do it. But I can call them. I can't force them to come with me, or else recruiting would be way easier. But
Sure.
So that's what I mean by having weekly recruiting goals that are focused on process. If you focus on your process, the results are going to come afterwards.
That makes a lot of sense. I think the more specific you get around who you're looking for, and think of it in more of a ongoing kind of a long-term game, and really not looking at it kind of like in the crunch periods, and then really kind of thinking about goals and what you're shooting for. It's not just the bottom of the funnel, but really what you're putting in at the top, I think makes a ton of sense. So
yeah, and I'm sure that's true, with your process over at OnQ as well. Like, you guys know your numbers, your metrics. And so then it's just, can we put those numbers in our favor when it comes to serving our clients' needs? If I know X amount of calls is going to create X amount of sales, well, then let's make X amount of calls. So then I know we're going to get the result that we need. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have all the bells and whistles when it comes to those algorithms of those numbers.
You're right. It is a funnel, and you have to think about kind of every aspect and where you can influence and play strategies to get as much through and convert as many of those leads. In our case, moving leads into book jobs, and then in this case, kind of job leads into employees. So, well, I think we're out of time here. So Hunter, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been really interesting and helpful for moving company owners out there who I'm sure are looking at this every day, not just, preparing for the busy season ahead, but, in and out. So thank you and Move Up Consulting for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, look us up, moveupconsulting.com. Be happy to have a conversation, and let's have a great summer, everyone. I'm pumped. It's going to be a good year.
Have a great summer. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. See y'all. Bye.
Bye.